When I was 6, I think it actually may have been my 6th birthday, but I have to double check with Mom about that because I'm not sure. But I was 6 years old for sure. We packed up the car, me, my younger brother, I only had one brother at the time, and then my older sister, my Aunt Jeannie, and my parents, and we drove to Ontario. To start the trip, we drove across the island from Mount Pearl to Port aux Basques for the ferry, and I vaguely remember passing through Corner Brook. It's a vague memory, but I do remember lots of trees, and it was summertime. I believe it was a cousin or a second cousin of my dad, and we just stopped and visited on the way to Port aux Basques. I haven't been back to Corner Brook until January of 2022, and I actually enjoyed it so much in January that I went back again in September. And I spent a couple of days there each time. It's a really cool city. It's a small city, no question about that. It's the second community in Newfoundland that was designated city, that achieved city status. Now it's actually, I believe, there's 4 communities, St. John's, Mount Pearl, Paradise, and CBS all have greater population than Corner Brook. The greater St. John's area is made up, obviously, of a bunch of bedroom communities. Corner Brook, on the other hand, is kind of the service center for the Bay of Islands and the entire west coast of the province. So even though the population is the same as like Paradise or CBS or Mount Pearl, it definitely feels more like a city, like more of a standalone community. There's a lot of things around Corner Brook that you just don't find in a city like Mount Pearl. Traveling there in the winter, you know, the west coast of Newfoundland is a little bit colder than St. John's and a little bit more snow falls typically. And Corner Brook is basically where Marble Mountain is located. It's in Steady Brook, but it's like a 5 or 10 minute drive outside the city to get to the hill. I know in recent years there's been some warmer temperatures and less snowfall, and there's been problems on the hill, but the day that I was there, I must have showed up like just after closing time because there was, as far as I could tell, great conditions for skiing or snowboarding, but there was only a few people sort of looking like they were finishing up their run. By the time I finished what I was trying to do there, I was literally the last car in the parking lot, but it's probably Newfoundland's crown jewel when it comes to winter sports. A lot more that you can do besides just skiing and snowboarding. In the area, there's lots of trails for skidooing and snowshoeing and going for winter hikes. A lot to do in the winter. Of course, Memorial University has the Grenfell campus in Corner Brook. I spend a lot of time on my channel telling people why you should come to Newfoundland. And one of the major draws for people that are outside of Newfoundland, whether in other Canadian provinces or in other countries around the world, one of the big draws to come to Canada, or specifically Newfoundland, is education. And Corner Brook has the Grenfell campus of Memorial University. Memorial University, I believe, has about 19,000 undergraduate students. And if I'm not mistaken, it's about 1,300 of them are at the Grenfell campus, the smaller campus than the main St. John's one. Memorial's going through some issues right now. A lot of problems this year with a lot of changes going on. But Grenfell campus looks like it's been very well kept. It looks like there's some new buildings, and it just looks like a solid university. Now, I stopped by in the winter, and when I came back in the summer, it looks like a completely different place. I highly recommend going. If you're into winter sports, going in the winter has got to be on your list, but go back in the summer because it's a beautiful town. My memory when I was 6 years old was that it just seemed like there was more trees, more green in Corner Brook. It just seemed like there was a lot more tree-lined streets, lots of greenery all around the city, and it was really pretty in the summertime. And if I mention Marble Mountain as being kind of like the crown jewel for the winter, the little train that they have to take you around the city in the summer is probably the coolest thing that Corner Brook has to offer in the summer. Not to take away from the restaurants and the other scenery and the things that are around. It's a pretty cool city all around. But the little train was a lot of fun. Basically, it's a small city, so it doesn't take very long to do a loop around the main streets in the city. That's what the train does. It takes you on maybe about a half an hour trip around the town. We made our decision to go on the train one afternoon on a beautiful day, but it was kind of like showers passing through, so of course by the time we got on the train, they had to pull the covers down. But you could still see out. It wasn't a miserable day, it was just a little bit damp. The pulp and paper mill is kind of the reason the city exists. I mean, not really. The history goes back before the pulp and paper mill, and there was fisheries and a forestry industry that was in the city. But the pulp and paper mill is the reason why the city is a city. It's such a beautiful town, it almost just looks like a ski resort town with this great big mill pumping out some kind of exhaust. I don't know if it's smoke or what it is. Can't help but notice it because no matter where you are in the city, you can see it. So it'd be nice if the city existed without that, but at the same time, the city owes its existence basically to the mill. So I'm not going to say much about it other than the fact that it's there. When you think of Newfoundland and tourism in particular, you often think of Jelly Bean Row in St. John's or outport communities like Bonavista or Fogo Island or Twillingate or Fairyland. These places that have a strong fishing heritage and go back centuries with the fishing industry. Communities developed in ways that made sense for the fishery. Houses were built following certain architectural styles that kind of follow similar lines around eastern Newfoundland. But in Corner Brook, because it developed along a different mold, there was a strong influence from German and Latvian immigrants that came over to help develop the secondary industries in Newfoundland beyond the fisheries back in Joey Smallwood's early days as premier with the new industry scheme that he was working on. So there's just a different feel in Corner Brook than the rest of the province. If you're in St. John's and you're just looking for a little change of scenery, it's a few hours across the island, but worth the trip to go experience either the winter or the summer. And there's actually more like 4 distinct seasons in Corner Brook, so I'm told, not that I've experienced spring or fall. Spring is non-existent in St. John's, but apparently they have spring in Corner Brook, and fall is supposed to be spectacular with all the trees that I mentioned earlier, with the changing of the leaves, and without the constant winds that you find on the East Coast. They actually have time to change color and fall on their own schedule. It's a small city, but it's a beautiful city, kind of the centerpiece of the West Coast in terms of population. Highly recommend you to go and see it if you are into winter sports, snowboarding or skiing or skidooing, any kind of snow machines. I think it's the place that you have to visit in the wintertime. But don't limit yourself to only going in the winter, because in the summertime, it's a few hours drive from St. John's, of course, but it's worth the trip to just get out of town and be in another city.